The stories pulsed within her like a heartbeat, urging her to choose a path. Just then, her phone buzzed, breaking the fragile silence. With trembling hands, she saw the message flash across the screen. "I heard you're digging up the past. Be careful, Lucy. Not all stories want to be told." The walls of her reality began to close in, the truths she unearthed seeming to suffocate amidst flickering uncertainties. What lay ahead could unravel not only her family legacy, but her very existence. Lucy felt the pull of darkness wrapping around her, tightening with each thought that reiterated how slim her grip had always been on her own life. Committed to learn, but terrified of what the knowledge would mean, she stood poised on the edge of a story that had yet to be written, knowing the cost could be far greater than she'd ever imagined. The air felt suffocating, laden with doubts that clung to Lucy like the thick dust coating the artifacts around her. She hesitated, the weight of her choices pressing like a stone in her chest. The journal lay open before her, a gateway to understanding ancient curses, yet a potential portal to conflict in her family. Lucy's mind whirled with contrasting images. Her father's frail form, her brother's scorn, and the tantalizing promise of revelation. It was enough to paralyze anyone, especially someone who had dedicated years to teaching others the importance of history. With a deep breath, she narrowed her focus. Perhaps there was a way to merge these disparate threads together. If she could investigate the curses, it might illuminate not just the past, but also her future. A flicker of resolve ignited within her. Lucy began drafting a proposal for a lecture series based around the Pharaoh curses, aiming to captivate her students with the stories that had been hidden from them, just as she felt stifled in her role as an educator. Yet as she poured her energy into the lecture, doubts began to creep back. Could she truly share these tales without alienating her brother or seemingly abandoning her father? The thought haunted her, transforming excitement into a bitter swell of fear. What if her brother's warnings held weight? What if the past she unearthed was far darker than she had imagined? Determined not to succumb to those fears, Lucy picked up her phone and texted a colleague, someone who had always valued her historical insight. "Can we meet? I need to discuss a new lecture series." The response came quickly, confirmation of her colleague's enthusiasm. The immediate support buoyed Lucy's spirits. Someone else saw the value in her passion, and with it she felt a spark of validation. Days passed, and as she prepared for her meeting, the journal remained an ever-present companion, gleaming with cryptic significance. The potential of the Pharaoh curses began to transform in her mind from a burden to an opportunity for exploration. It became an extension of her, like every other lesson she sought to impart. Once ruffled by the weight of familial expectations, she now envisioned standing before her students not as the timid teacher overshadowed by her peers, but as an innovator, a guide through the tales of yore. At the meeting with her colleague, they explored the contours of her ideas, weaving together history with personal narratives. Each legend she recounted ignited the spark of creativity, propelling the conversation forward. Lucy found herself recounting almost breathlessly, detailing her hopes to bridge ancient stories with the contemporary dialogue surrounding identity and legacy. But the excitement was shadowed by an itch at the back of her mind, a foreboding sensation that perhaps she was stepping into a realm she didn't fully understand. Could her pursuit lead to self-discovery, or would it unearth buried conflicts? There was little time to ponder, however. The lecture series began to take shape with a sense of urgency, and the anticipation of her first lecture drew closer. As she drove home that evening, Lucy's mind raced with possibilities. The glow of streetlights illuminated her furrowed brow, a reflection of her internal storm. Something was shifting in her, a desire awakening that could no longer be ignored. The power of history felt alive. The stories she would tell could change not just her students' understanding, but also her notion of withstanding family ties. On the cusp of this transformative journey, Lucy glanced at her phone, noticing the remnants of the ominous text she had received earlier. Not all stories want to be told. A shiver crept down her spine. The weight of history was immense, but so was the potential for self-discovery. Would she embrace it, no matter the cost? The boundary between past and future felt perilously thin, and Lucy realized she was now standing at the precipice. A leap of faith was necessary to uncover the truth. As she prepared to dive deeper into the world of ancient curses, a nagging thought persisted. What if the truths she sought to unveil were more perilous than she anticipated? Lucy woke the next morning with a sense of urgency thrumming in her veins. The journal sat on her desk, the pages almost humming with the weight of the stories contained within. She had dreams, visions of herself standing before a classroom alive with curiosity, eager to unlock the mysteries of the past. The lecture series she planned was no longer just a professional endeavor. It was an extension of her identity, a crucial step towards claiming her voice. As she sipped her coffee, she dissected her plan for the first lecture. The thrill of connecting the Pharaoh curses to modern dilemmas sent a rush of adrenaline through her. Each curse, each story, was steeped in humanity, much like her own challenges. Yet lurking beneath her excitement was a quicksand of doubt. What if her brother was right? What if this journey incurred a price too steep? Shaking her head, Lucy banished those thoughts. She needed to focus. Her students' eyes, wide with wonder, could easily drown out the noise of her insecurities. Only by embracing this initiative could she hope to inspire others. She was both teacher and learner, and this was her moment. Determined, she set about finalizing her lecture. The papers were strewn across her kitchen table, a chaotic array of facts and personal reflections. The contrasts between ancient belief and contemporary understanding fascinated her. Each curse revealed not only a lesson from history, but also a mirror reflecting modern challenges. Power, consequences, the human tendency to seek control over destiny. As she sorted through her notes, a phone call from her father fractured her concentration. He hadn't sounded well lately, and the thought of him alone in that house, her family's house, where memories lingered like shadows, gnawed at her. Was her pursuit of history pulling her away from her family? Would her brother's scorn become reality, reinforcing the rift that had always simmered beneath the surface? "Hey, Dad," she said, trying to infuse warmth into her voice. "Lucy, sweetie, just checking in," he replied, though his tone sounded distant, almost frail. "Have you eaten today?" she asked, her concern sharpening her courage. Yes, just the usual. Don't fuss over me," he dismissed, with an undertone that suggested loneliness. The conversation veered into familiar territory, weather, local news, but a hollow space lingered between them, a chasm filled with unspoken worries. Setting her phone down, anxiety pulsed through her. Could she both explore her scholarly passion and support her family? Days passed swiftly as her first lecture approached. Night after night, she poured herself into the material, conjuring vibrant tales from the dim corridors of history. She discovered hidden layers in her own persona, realizing her passion for antiquities was more than just academic. It was a deeply ingrained part of who she was. Finally, the day of the lecture arrived. She stood backstage, heart pounding, the stage lights casting an ethereal glow. Each sound from the audience ignited her nervous energy, a tumultuous blend of fear and exhilaration. As she walked onto the stage, she met the expectant faces. An emotional jolt surged through her. "Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to delve into the enigmatic world of Pharaoh curses," she began, her voice steadied by newfound resolve. As she spoke, recounting the tales of wrath and justice, she sensed a connection forming between her and the audience. They leaned in, captivated not just by the curses, but by the way she interwove her own journey into the fabric of history. As she concluded, applause erupted, echoing around the room like a wave crashing against the shore. Lucy felt a surge of affirmation. She had done it. But a familiar unease lingered, curling at the edges of her euphoria. She had stepped into her hour, but what of the consequences? That evening, as she drove home, a message from her brother flashed on her screen. "So, you're just going to ignore the warnings?" Lucy gripped the steering wheel tighter. The exhilaration of her lecture collided with the weight of impending family tension. The stakes were higher than she had anticipated, and the question lingered heavily. What lay on the other side of this pursuit? The stories she dared to uncover, and the relationships she might jeopardize. As the lights blurred past her, Lucy understood that every choice came with a cost. She was no longer merely an educator. She was on the verge of becoming something much more. If only she could navigate the complexities of her own life amidst the weight of history she was determined to confront. And then a chilling thought settled in her mind. What if her own family's past held shadows darker than any curse she dared to explore? The days following her lecture were a whirlwind of exhilaration and introspection. Lucy found herself confronting her newfound visibility as an educator with a mix of pride and trepidation. Each interaction with students became laced with deeper significance. The potential for connection heightened as they sought answers to questions she too had pondered. The realm of time-worn curses had ignited a spark in her, propelling her towards a version of herself that had long been dormant. Yet, with each affirming glance from her students, she couldn't shake the dark cloud that loomed on the horizon. The weight of her brother's words clung to her consciousness. Ignoring the warnings felt like a betrayal of family bonds. The ambiguity of her choices gnawed at her. What had become of their connection? The rift created by her commitment to her individual journey felt increasingly tangible, threatening to upend the only sense of stability she'd ever known. Between lessons and planning the next lecture, Lucy found moments of solitude intensified her inner dialogue. She immersed herself in the journal, poring over artifacts of the past. Each entry seemed to vibrate with relevance, mapping out parallels not just in ancient civilizations, but in her life. She noted the emotions intertwined with power, envy, and ambition that coursed through the curses she discussed in class. It was glaringly clear these were not just stories, they were warnings, lessons beckoning her to critically explore her own decisions. A week later, after a particularly animated discussion with her students about the ethics surrounding historical narratives, she felt a surge of clarity. A piece was falling into place. Her brother's warnings were rooted in genuine concern for her well-being, but they also mirrored her own fears. It wasn't just a fear of curses, it was a fear of confronting her legacy. This realization sent her to the archives at the university, where the whispered secrets of history were stored in dusty volumes. She began to sift through materials not just related to her current focus, but tracing her familial lineage. What lay in the shadows of her ancestry? As she flipped through yellowed pages, a labyrinth of emotions unfolded. Tales of resilience, betrayal, and resilience again. Secrets buried in her family tree threatened to surface, suggesting the curses she had always feared weren't mere allegories, but reflections of her own lineage. On her way home, Lucy's thoughts spun with possibilities. She couldn't avoid her family's history any longer. With her heart racing, she resolved to visit her father, to uncover the dynamics of their past. The revelation of her family's hidden narratives could illuminate her present and future, perhaps guiding her through the choices she felt compelled to take. As she crossed the threshold into her family home, the familiar scent of old books mixed with nostalgia engulfed her. Her father sat alone in the living room, his figure more stooped than she remembered. Each heartbeat echoed loudly, amplifying the unsaid words reverberating between them. When their eyes met, something shifted. A recognition danced in the air. A question she had never dared to voice hung, heavy and tangible. "Dad," she began, determination coursing through her, "I think it's time we talked about our family's history. There are things I need to understand." The look in her father's eyes told her that her family's past was eager to unfold, but it came with a cost she would need to confront. As the silence stretched between them, Lucy realized this conversation was just the beginning. She was stepping into uncharted territory, and with it came the undeniable risk of unraveling both the past and her understanding of herself. The journey had only just commenced, and even as the potential weight of her discoveries loomed, she felt oddly prepared. The exploration of family shadows beckoned to her, the intertwining of personal choice and historical significance laying bare a new path. What more would she uncover about her own life, and what consequences would arise from venturing into realms that had remained untouched for far too long? As Lucy sat across from her father, anticipation gnawed at her stomach. The air hung thick with the weight of years spent avoiding tough conversations. She drew in a breath, attempting to summon both courage and clarity. "Dad," she said slowly, "I've been digging through some family histories, and I need to understand why we've never talked about all this." The flicker of surprise on her father's face was telling. He seemed caught between the urge to shield her and a hesitant recognition that perhaps the time had come. He shifted in his seat, the old chair creaking under the strain of history. Her heart raced. This was the moment she'd been rehearsing in her mind, but now every word felt like it was steeped in vulnerability. "I came across stories, curses that have plagued our family for generations. I can't ignore them any longer. They speak to who we are and why we are." His expression shifted, a mask of apprehension replacing the initial surprise. "You can't just play with these kinds of stories, Lucy. They have repercussions." The warning rolled off his tongue, laden with a lifetime of experience that she was only beginning to grasp. "Maybe that's exactly why I need to understand," she pressed, her voice firmer than she felt. "If these tales hold truths about our past, then they may help me confront the choices I'm facing, my own legacy." He studied her, an internal struggle playing out on his features. It was clear he knew more than he was letting on, and for a fleeting moment she glimpsed the man he had once been, curious, adventurous, perhaps even reckless. "You can't just leave things buried," he finally said, voice low, "but you must be prepared for what you may unearth." Lucy wanted to scream at him for holding back, for shrouding their heritage in secrecy, but instead her curiosity deepened. "What are you afraid I'll find?" At that, the subtle tremor of his voice betrayed him. "Some stories aren't meant to be told. They can haunt you, like the curses you study." Silence engulfed them once again, stretching out and thickening with every passing moment. They were two people standing on the precipice of knowledge, locked in a battle of will and fear. Did she have the strength to pursue a history that might reshape her understanding of herself? "Dad, if these curses, these old stories, are connected to who we are, I have to confront them. I can't go through life looking over my shoulder, wondering what's lurking in the shadows." The determination in her voice surprised even her. Perhaps the vivid discussions in the classroom had fortified her, giving her a sense of agency she had previously lacked. He held her gaze for a moment longer, and she could see his doubt mingling with something else, perhaps admiration or the faint flicker of hope. "Very well, Lucy," he said finally, resolve joining his support. "I'll tell you what I know, but understand, some knowledge comes with a heavy price." As her father began to recount tales she had long considered mere folklore, the room transformed into a living archive of their bloodline and the burden it carried. Lucy clenched her fists, determined to draw strength from whatever might come her way. Yet, as stories unfurled in intricate layers, Lucy sensed that this was not merely an unveiling of family narratives, it was an unpeeling of her own veiled identity. She could almost feel the echoes of voices from the past reverberating through her, urging her to forge connections she had never dared to explore. Confronted by both fear and fascination, Lucy realized the ramifications of her investigation did not just rest with the old myths, but were intricately woven through her own evolving narrative. What mistakes had her ancestors made? What relentless quests had they embarked upon? And how might she navigate the fragile boundaries they had laid out? Unbeknownst to them both, as they traversed through shared stories, one indisputable truth loomed over her burgeoning commitment. Time was running short. Her father's resolve might falter under the burden of the past, and she'd need to uncover her own resilience quickly. With each fragment of history shared, Lucy felt more aware of her responsibility to act, to break free from any potential curses that might linger. The next step waited just beyond the doorstep of their shared history, laden with the urgency of discovery. "And when I'm done," Lucy said softly, "I will face the consequences. I promise." A new glint sparked behind her eyes, one of transforming fear into intentional action. The moment was heavy, but within it lay the exhilarating brush of change. What awaited her on this labyrinthine journey? How could she reconcile the shadows of the past with her burgeoning identity? The challenges ahead seemed daunting, but Lucy felt ready to embrace them. Beyond the stories woven into the fabric of her family's history, a whisper of courage carried her forward. The time had come to face not only her lineage, but also the power of her choices that could shift the destiny of generations to come. A sudden chill swept through the room as her father paused mid-sentence, an uncharacteristic shudder stealing the warmth from the air. She couldn't shake the feeling that there were elements he still held, fragments of their historical narrative that would challenge their evolving bond even further. What remained unspoken, hovering in the silence? And would her endeavor for truth deepen the rift or create an unbreakable connection? The air had shifted, thickening with anticipation as Lucy leaned in closer to her father, her chest swelling with a mixture of urgency and trepidation. The stories spun from his lips were not just mere myths, they were anchors tethering her to her own history. With each tale, the fragments of her identity began to coalesce even as dread coiled in her stomach. "Your great-grandfather believed he could outsmart the curse," he continued, his voice a low whisper now, tinged with regret. "He sought the truth in ways that spiraled into madness, chasing ghosts locked in the past. He ignored the warnings until it was too late." Lucy felt the chill of fear crawl up her spine at the thought of a man so determined that his pursuit led to ruin. What if she was repeating his mistakes? "But if I don't confront the past, if I just let these stories sit in shadows, won't they haunt me too?" Her question hung heavily between them, glistening with the weight of unspoken dread. "Yes," he admitted, his gaze lowering as if he were contemplating the weight of his own foreboding. "But knowledge can be a burden. It can consume you if you're not prepared." A hard knot settled in her throat. He had implied that this journey could unravel her. Yet the thrill of discovery beckoned her, and she yearned to hold the reins of her destiny. "Maybe it's time to unearth what's binding us," she said, the strength of her voice surprising her, as if she were channeling an inner resolve she hadn't fully acknowledged before. He looked pained, but nodded slowly. "You need to be careful. These stories may contain wisdom, but they could also ignite paths that are better left unexplored." Their eyes locked, a silent pact forming in the tension of their gaze. For the first time, they were aligning in a quest for understanding. Pushing aside her father's trepidation, Lucy felt her adrenaline spike. She envisioned mapping out their family's history on paper, not just dates and names, but the tangled web of choices and consequences intertwined like vines around the lonely, stark tree of their family legacy. Each name carried potential weight, each tale an opportunity for enlightenment or entrapment. As the stories unfolded, she wrote feverishly in her notebook, her pen skimming across the pages, noting the curses and choices that contrasted serviceably against bravery and folly. "What about the tale of the second cousin?" she interjected, recalling fragments she had picked up along family gatherings. "They say he turned from the curse, but was ultimately consumed by it." Her father's face tightened. He tried to run from his identity. You can only run so far. This resonated with Lucy more than she had anticipated. She recognized an echo of her own fears, the hesitation in her decision-making, the constant need for validation in her professional life that left her feeling unmoored. She wondered how her ancestors' choices created ripples that spanned generations, shaping not just their fates but her own. The deeper they delved, the more Lucy unearthed parallels between their past sins and her present reality. Each revelation spurred an introspection that shook the foundations of her understanding. What parts of her were tethered to those curses? She felt compelled to assert herself, to stand tall against an inherited legacy of mistakes. "Dad, if I'm to face these stories, I need to see them for what they are," she declared, the weight of her words pushing her forward. No more hiding. The unfinished sentences loomed heavily in the air like a specter unbidden. She knew that they were on the brink of unlocking not merely stories, but threads of raw truth, binding her family's history to the very core of her essence. What awaited her wasn't just knowledge, it was the potential for transformation. "Then we need to tread carefully," her father warned, a note of urgency creeping into his tone. "It's not just history we're digging up, it's our understanding of ourselves." Just then, the lights flickered, momentarily dimming the room. Lucy's heart quickened. Had they awakened something? She shot a glance at her father. The flicker had unearthed a layer of fear in his expression. Was the history they were uncovering truly ready to re-emerge? "Is there something we haven't discussed?" she pressed, now sensing urgency as their exploration ventured further into unexplored realms. His reluctance hung visibly in the air, and she needed to know. "What else is lurking in the shadows, Dad?" As silence cloaked them again, an unsettling knowledge pervaded the room. She could feel it, a brewing storm on the horizon of discovery. What was yet undisclosed, and how might it reshape everything she thought she knew? "Lucy," he finally spoke, the tremor in his voice betraying a fear long buried, "some darkness will not simply fade away." With her heart pounding, a sense of trepidation mingled with excitement coursed through her. She knew this journey was only just beginning, one that could either illuminate her understanding or unravel her very being. What had she truly stirred? The road ahead stretched uncertain and fraught with challenges. As determination seized her, Lucy felt the urgency of her pursuit grow insistent. She was ready to break ground. She just needed to unearth the truths that would set her free or chain her to the past. Would she find clarity or succumb to the shadows? The darkness of uncertainty lingered, but the pull of knowledge was undeniable. What lay in wait at the end of this inquiry? And could the unfurling of her lineage breathe life into her own identity, or would it ensnare her deeper into a cursed legacy? As she sat in the dim light, Lucy felt the room close in around her, echoing with the weight of her ancestry. The air was heavy with history, laden with choices made long before her birth that now seemed to reverberate in her own choices. Each flicker of the light seemed to pulse with an echo of caution. There was more to uncover, but was she truly ready for what might be revealed? "Tell me everything," she urged, her voice firm yet tinged with uncertainty. She felt as if she were on the precipice of something monumental, a vertigo that both terrified and excited her. The anticipation wrapped itself around her heart, squeezing lightly, urging her to dive into the depths of her familial legacy. Her father cleared his throat. "There are secrets I've kept, stories intertwined with our family's heritage that I never thought you'd need to know, and frankly, I wish I could keep them buried." "Why now?" Lucy asked, needing to understand. "Why reveal them?" "Because you deserve the truth," he replied, his voice steadying. "Ignoring it won't make it go away. It'll follow you. It always does." Lucy nodded slowly, her determination crystallizing. She realized this was not just about digging through old letters or photographs. It was about confronting the intangible threads that connected her to decisions that had shaped her very essence. "I want to understand," she asserted, feeling the resolve churn within her. She needed clarity, not just for herself, but for the legacy she was part of, to break the cycle she sensed loomed over her. With every ounce of her being, she yearned to transform her potential into strength. "All right then," he began, hesitating slightly. "There's a reason our family tends to avoid certain locations and topics. The old stories about curses are rooted in truths that have haunted us, clinging like shadows." Lucy felt an involuntary shiver run through her. Curses? Were they real or mere illusions twisted through time? "Which stories?" she pressed, her anticipation growing more urgent. "Which places?" Her father leaned closer, earnestness replacing his earlier reluctance. "Your great-grandmother once visited a place believed to be a source of our family's burdens. She found herself drawn into folklore, believing she could unveil deeper wisdom. Instead, it led to grief." Lucy sensed a fracture in her father's voice, a warning shaped by his own experiences. "What happened?" His gaze dropped, tracing patterns in the grain of the table. She chased the notion of breaking the curse, but the more she sought to understand, the further she seemed to fall into despair. Realization dawned on Lucy. The quest for knowledge, for identity, bore its own risks. Wasn't that her choice, she challenged lightly, needing to disentangle fear from her quest? Isn't choice key here? "Yes, but choices are double-edged swords," he contradicted gently. What she thought was empowerment turned into an obsession. Knowledge became a consuming fire instead of a guiding light. Lucy considered this deeply, scrutinizing her feelings about her own desire for validation. Was her present quest a repetition of past follies? She had long battled feelings of inadequacy in her professional life, seeking external affirmation rather than fostering self-confidence. "No more dark shadows," she said with determination. "I must find the truth, even if it's uncomfortable. It could be the very key I need to reshape my destiny." A shift in her father's demeanor revealed understanding. "You must be prepared to face the consequences of whatever truth you uncover. Consider it a test of your resolve." The weight of his words settled in her chest like stones. Each revelation could unleash something potent. Could she forge her path without succumbing to the weight of history? Then, without warning, the lights flickered again, casting eerie shapes about the room. Lucy's heart jumped, a potent rush of adrenaline coursing through her. "Dad, are we stirring something we shouldn't?" she asked, fear threading through her earlier bravado. "Only time will tell," he said quietly, his face a mask of uncertainty. Lucy sensed an unyielding determination simmer in her veins. "One thing is clear. I will not hide from this. I will expose our truth, take control of our narrative." As her father nodded, she felt an unspoken understanding pass between them. This journey was about more than uncovering stories. It was about unearthing her own strength. Just then, a sharp knock interrupted the oppressive silence, sending a jolt of electricity through the air. Who could that be? Lucy wondered aloud, heart racing. Maybe it's someone looking for answers, her father said ominously. Lucy took a deep breath, her resolve stronger than ever. She was ready to peel back layers of her family history. But now, with this unexpected visitor at the door, she felt the tide of her journey shift, twisting toward unforeseen possibilities. Would the answers she sought bring her liberation or further complications? The sound of the knock reverberated through Lucy's chest, a visceral reminder of the thin veil separating her from the unknown. Her father eyed her, the gravity of the moment hanging between them like a thread. The door felt like a portal to uncertainty, and she couldn't ignore the pulse of urgency thrumming beneath her skin. "You don't have to answer it," her father suggested, his tone uncharacteristically softening as he grasped the weight of the moment. But Lucy shook her head. "I need to confront whatever this is. Running away has never been my style." Clenching her fists, she prepared herself, feeling more empowered by the second. She was no longer just a passive participant in her life. She was poised to navigate the tempest of her family's history and, now, the present. With a resolve that felt electric, she unlocked the door, pulling it open with a slow, purposeful motion. Standing there was a tall figure, cloaked in shadows, with a hard-set jaw and eyes like storm clouds. "Lucy Aldrich?" the stranger inquired, voice firm yet not unfriendly. "Yes, that's me," Lucy replied, a flicker of trepidation running through her, but overshadowed by her intrigue. "I need to talk to you about your family," he said, glancing behind him as if wary of being followed. "It's urgent." Her heart raced. Could this be just the confirmation she required, or might this encounter deepen the mystery? "What do you know?" she asked, her voice firmer than she anticipated. The man shifted slightly, stepping over the threshold into her home. "My name is Ethan Voss. I've been researching the curse that has haunted your family for generations." Lucy's pulse quickened at the mention of the curse, a visceral reminder of her father's somber words. "How do you know about that?" "Your great-grandmother's journey was not just folklore. I believe that there are still remnants of her connection to those events, and it's affecting you now." He hesitated, gauging her reaction before continuing. "I know your family's secrets, but you need to trust me first." The tension in the room tightened as she shared a glance with her father, who seemed less than enthused by the stranger's sudden arrival. "What kind of secrets?" she pressed, undeterred. Ethan took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "There are sources of power associated with your lineage, places that can either free you or further bind you to the past. Your ancestor's obsession wasn't unfounded. She was led into something much deeper." Lucy's mind raced, her ambition colliding with a creeping anxiety. Led by what? By whom? "By the very forces that helped shape her decisions," he said, his voice steady but laced with urgency. What she encountered went beyond simple folklore. It was a legacy that tried to capture her spirit, and unless you confront it directly, you may find yourself entangled in the same web. For a moment, the air hung heavy with dread as Lucy considered the weight of his words. The ambition to uncover a truth that would liberate her now felt like standing on the edge of a precipice, looking into an abyss unfathomable. "Then what's the next step?" Lucy finally asked, the determination surging through her once more. This was what she sought, the very foundation upon which she could construct her empowered future. Ethan leaned forward, intensity brimming in his eyes. "We need to visit those places, familiarize yourself with their history, but be warned, every step into the past could expose you to its lingering darkness. You must be ready for what you might find." "I am," she asserted defiantly. "I'm not turning back this time." He nodded, seeming to respect her conviction, but the shadows that danced across his face hinted at unspoken perils. "Then we leave at dawn," he said. Lucy stood a little taller, yet an internal agitation simmered beneath her confidence. She felt the stirrings of her ancestral energy and shadows, threatening yet alluring. Would this journey offer freedom or tighten the noose of responsibility she was desperate to escape? Tomorrow would be the beginning, and yet tonight doubt crept in, whispering questions she had yet to confront. As she closed the door, sealing off the uncertainty that lay outside, she glanced at her father. His expression was a mix of pride and concern, reflecting her own inner turmoil. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" he asked quietly. "More than ever," she replied, steeling herself against the chill of apprehension. But as she lay in bed that night, surrounded by the silence of the past, unease lingered like an unwelcome guest. What if this journey would not only uncover the truths of her family, but also reveal painful truths about herself? And as she drifted into an uneasy sleep, one thought took root. The path to self-discovery often crumbles beneath your feet. Would she find her footing, or would she topple back into the hidden chasms of family legacy? Dawn arrived, unfurling the light of a new day with an enigmatic promise. Lucy awoke before the sun fully broke through the horizon, her mind churning in a tempest of thoughts. Each heartbeat echoed the uncertainty that lay ahead, yet beneath the apprehension, a flicker of excitement sparked within her. Today was not just another day. It was the first step into the relentless depths of her family's past. As she prepared for their journey, brushing her hair back and tying it into a tight ponytail, she caught her reflection in the mirror. The face staring back mirrored her resolve, yet the flickers of self-doubt danced around her eyes. Was she truly ready to confront the shadows that had loomed over her ancestry? She took a deep breath, feeling the coolness of the air fill her lungs and steady her nerves. This was about empowerment, about claiming her own narrative, not being a victim of the legacies weighing down on her spirit. Ethan arrived on time, his presence interrupting her solitary contemplation. "All set?" he asked, a mix of encouragement and seriousness lining his features. He held the car door open, and as she stepped through, she felt an electric anticipation coursing through her veins. The journey to the first location was fraught with silence, a heavy gravity that wrapped around them like thick fog. Lucy stared out the window, watching the landscape shift from familiar suburban homes to stretches of untamed wilderness. Each mile felt like peeling back the layers of a complex, hidden truth, revealing the scars left by those who walked the path before her. They arrived at an old plantation, the weathered structure looming like a specter against the sky. "This is where generations of your family struggled against the curse," Ethan explained, leading her up the cracked stone path. "It was rumored that your great-grandmother had uncovered a hidden well, which was said to be the source of the family's misfortune. If we want to untangle your legacy, we need to confront what lies beneath." The environment shifted the moment they crossed the threshold, a thickness in the air that made her skin prickle. There it was again, the push and pull of fear versus determination. Were they truly there to confront an ethereal existence, or would she discover something darker about herself? Inside the plantation, dust particles danced in the streams of light filtering through the windows. Each room felt like a repository of memories, echoing with whispers of the past. But as she moved through the halls, Lucy found herself grappling with a personal dilemma. Was she meant to confront the family curse to free herself, or could she risk uncovering a truth that might shackle her to it irrevocably? She paused at a dusty portrait hanging crookedly on the wall. It was her great-grandmother, her expression strong yet burdened. "What if my bloodline has cursed me just by existing in this world?" Lucy whispered, both to herself and Ethan, who was nearby examining the room.
Your lineage can be a source of strength, Lucy, but you have to claim that power." His words churned within her. Was there strength in confronting this curse, or was it inevitable that uncovering the truth would alter her fundamentally?
As they descended into the underground chamber where the well was rumored to be, Lucy's heart raced. Shadows flickered powerfully, igniting latent fears and questions. Confronting this legacy wasn't merely about historical reckoning. It was about stripping away layers of identity that had long defined her, exposing elements she might not be ready to face. The old stones felt cold against her palms as she approached the well, a solemn entity in the chamber. What if confronting this well unearths truths I've spent my entire life ignoring? What if I'm not strong enough? The thoughts spiraled in her mind like a tempest, her internal conflict raging against the storm of her external journey. "Then we will face it together," Ethan assured her, his voice a steady anchor amidst overwhelming waves. But would facing together be enough? As the water glimmered, reflecting her image, Lucy wondered if any truth she uncovered would truly liberate her or bind her closer to the shadows. The well was more than a source of the past. It was a mirror of her own fears and vulnerabilities, the potential for either devastation or empowerment. At that moment, she could feel the amalgamation of her legacy, fierce and apprehensive. Whatever lay beyond the veil of her history was calling her forward, yet the question lingered: would she emerge emboldened or ensnared? With a deep breath, Lucy prepared to face whatever truth awaited her. But just as she stepped closer to the well's edge, the ground trembled slightly beneath her feet. In that charged moment, she realized that her journey had only just begun, and the most perilous revelations were still ahead of her, along with a reckoning she never anticipated. As the echoes of her ancestry reverberated, one thought loomed ominously. In this pursuit, she was not just uncovering her family's darkness, she was opening a door to her own. What awaited her in the depths? The tremor beneath Lucy's feet sent a rush of adrenaline through her, and the gravity of her journey hung heavily in the air. The well before her beckoned, a vessel of unspoken truths and ancestral legacies, and yet it also echoed with the weight of past mistakes. She sensed the dichotomy of fear and empowerment intertwining in a tumultuous dance within her. "Ethan," she said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing within, "if we're going to confront this, it has to be together. We need to face whatever lies down there." Ethan nodded, acknowledging her resolve. Together, they approached the rugged stones encapsulating the well, the darkness hovering just beyond the threshold, like a specter waiting to be awakened. As Lucy peered into the depths, familiar shadows of doubt flickered in her mind. Echoes of her father's warnings, the weight of her brother's skepticism, the burden of familial expectations. Yet she was not just a vessel of her family's legacy. She was a narrative ready to reshape itself. Taking a deep breath, she called upon her inner strength, the anticipation now mingling with determination. History does not define me. I will define it. As she knelt beside the well, Lucy could feel the pulsating energy coursing through her, entwining with the essence of those who came before her. She couldn't shy away. There were lessons to uncover, ancestors to honor. With Ethan by her side, she resolved to embrace the challenge ahead. "The journey of understanding may be fraught with risks, Lucy, but it could bring forth the clarity you're seeking," Ethan said, his voice imbued with a blend of reassurance and caution. Gathering her courage, Lucy prepared to confront whatever truth awaited her. She closed her eyes briefly, picturing the vibrant life she envisioned for herself, a life intertwined with discovery and empowerment. Then she took a leap of faith, leaning forward to peer even closer into the depths of the well.
Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the chamber, howling like a wild presence intent on revealing its truths. Shadows flickered around her, and Lucy's heart raced. Within the darkness, fragmented images swirled. Her great-grandmother's face, a reflection of aspirations and burdens, flickering away in the depths. The haunting legacy of the curse wrapped around her, amplifying her anxiety. "Focus, Lucy," Ethan urged, breaking through the tempest in her mind. "What do you see?" "I see the stories," she stammered, her voice shaking yet defiant. "The connections between their choices and mine. They faced a darkness, but so do I. I have to unearth those narratives." The urgency in her words echoed against the ancient stones, and with every syllable she felt the past thrumming with life, ready to be rewritten. As she opened her eyes, she whispered a silent incantation, a promise to break free from the confines of her inherited shadows. Slowly, she reached inside, retrieving an artifact hidden at the base of the well. Clawing through the darkness, she pulled forth an object wrapped in tattered fabric, a journal much like her own. "Lucy, what did you find?" Ethan asked, sensing the significance of her discovery. With trembling hands, she unwrapped the aged fabric, revealing pages filled with ancient script and familial notes. The journal once belonged to her great-grandmother, a testament to her struggles and hopes. It was a tangible connection to both the burden of the curse and the resilience woven into her bloodline. "This has the key," she breathed, realizing its potential. "This not only chronicles her journey, it speaks of overcoming." Ethan leaned closer, his curiosity piqued. "What does it say?" As Lucy delved into the pages, words leapt to life, recounting not just the curse, but also the glimmers of hope her ancestor clung to amid despair. Each entry chronicled her endeavors, her unwavering spirit in the face of darkness, and her strategies for defying the curse.
"We are not prisoners," Lucy read aloud, her voice filled with renewed conviction. "We possess the means to create our destinies." Energy coursed through her, a wave of empowerment washing away the residual fears that once clouded her vision. This was not just about facing familial shadows. It was about forging her path, unearthing connections that harnessed resilience against adversity. With each line, Lucy felt herself shifting, envisioning her own journey reflected in these stories. Here lay the understanding that true empowerment blossomed from acknowledging both the darkness and light, a balance of confronting one's past and reclaiming their future. "Yes," she exclaimed, the excitement bubbling to the surface. "This is what I needed. This shows I can redefine my path, break free from the narratives that have confined me. The curse does not have to dictate my reality." As she absorbed the revelations within the pages, the oppressive weight of familial expectation lifted, revealing the landscape for her potential to thrive. She was more than a mere vessel for inherited struggles. She was a transformative force capable of breaking cycles. When she looked up from the journal, there was clarity in her eyes and a hunger for knowledge blazing in her heart. "We must take this back, share it. This is a legacy of strength, not just a curse." Ethan nodded, admiration etched on his face. The potential for archiving these discoveries transformed the course of their quest, igniting a crusade for empowerment rather than a retreat into darkness. Together, they began to forge a new legacy, a narrative defined not by the burdens of the past, but by the strength harnessed through understanding and resilience. As they climbed out of the chamber, Lucy felt elevated, her spirit unfurling like a blooming flower. The winds of ancestral connections no longer felt threatening. They invigorated her, whispering promises of possibility and liberation.
The stories of the past would no longer haunt her. They would galvanize her journey. Lucy, ready to embrace her destiny and the courage that awaited, moved forward. The shadows dissipated, replaced by the vibrant light of her determination. "Let's share this," Lucy declared, a newfound clarity sparking within her. They didn't just need to face the family legacy, they had to adapt it into something triumphant. As day broke further, Lucy stepped into a new chapter. She was ready to conquer whatever lay ahead, not just to reclaim her narrative, but to inspire others to confront their histories with strength. This was her moment. Her persistence turned the curse into a powerful legacy. The past would always be intertwined with her identity, but Lucy was no longer bound by it. She was redefined by her truth. And as she looked up at the expansive sky, possibility bloomed around her, breathing life into her journey, echoing the strength of generations who had fought to overcome.
Today was the first day of her evolution, a journey not just toward self-discovery, but toward empowerment forged by understanding. Emboldened by the realization that the narrative of her lineage was hers to rewrite, Lucy felt a wave of gratitude wash over her as she prepared to step into the light, a true symbol of her family's resilience and a beacon for her own metamorphosis. She now faced the world armed not just with facts, but with the wisdom to embrace her fears, her legacies, and transform them into the tale she would continue to write, one filled with purpose, identity, and, above all, strength. This was merely the beginning, the bravery to venture into uncharted waters, fueled by the truths she had unearthed. With every step forward, she forged ahead with dedication, an unwavering testament to a woman determined to embrace her narrative and inspire others to embrace their own transformative journeys as well. Today was not just a definitive moment. It was the birth of a new legacy, her own. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion.